The family I babysat for let a third child break my laptop. Then they cut my pay because of my tank top. I am 15 and I had been babysitting for our neighbors, Caroline and Dan Harper, for a little over a year. Their daughters, Sarah and Eliza, were 8 and 6. I charged $20 an hour for both girls, which they had always paid without much drama. The last time I worked for them, I was supposed to watch the girls from 4 in the afternoon until 10:30 that night. Instead, they handed me a third child as they walked out the door, came home late, refused to help with my broken laptop, and then told me they would only pay me $50 because the shirt under my sweatshirt made them uncomfortable. When I asked how clothing they had never mentioned could erase 6.5 hours of work, Caroline reminded me that they had bought pizza and ice cream for the kids. Apparently, I had eaten 2 slices of pizza, so that counted as part of my pay. She also said I should be grateful they were willing to give me a second chance. By that point, one of their children had been asleep on my shoulder for almost an hour. The extra child had caused about $430 in damage to my laptop, and I had cleaned melted ice cream out of their rug. Yet somehow I was the one being given another chance. I know that sounds so ridiculous that it should have been obvious they were taking advantage of me. It was not obvious to me at first. The Harpers had lived 3 houses down from us since I was 9. Caroline brought soup when my mom had surgery. Dan helped my dad replace a section of our fence after a storm. Their girls called me Miss May even though I kept telling them I did not have to. They remembered my birthday and usually gave me an extra $10 around Christmas. Caroline was always saying I was not just their babysitter. I was family. At 14, being called family by adults who trusted me with their children felt like a huge compliment. I wanted everyone to think I was mature. I wanted to be the kind of babysitter parents recommended to other parents. So when Caroline came home 15 minutes late, I never added the extra time. If there were dishes in the sink, I washed them. If the girls had dumped toys all over the basement before I arrived, I cleaned those too. None of that seemed serious enough to argue about. My mom noticed the pattern before I did. She asked once why I was carrying a basket of the Harpers' laundry across their living room when she came to pick me up. I told her Eliza had spilled juice on a blanket, so I washed it, and then I added the rest of the load because the machine was already running. My mom looked at me and said, "You know, being helpful and being employed are 2 different things, right?" I rolled my eyes because I thought she was making a big deal out of nothing. Caroline did nice things for me too. She kept my favorite soda in the garage refrigerator. She ordered enough food for me when I worked during dinner. When I told her my mom thought she was giving me too many chores, she laughed and said, "Your mother has always been very formal about everything. We are neighbors. We take care of each other." That comment had more behind it than I understood at the time. My mom is Jewish. Caroline is very involved in her Catholic church. Neither of them cared that the other practiced a different religion when I was little, but over the years they had argued about school board issues, holiday displays, and local politics. They were polite in public, but there was always this tightness when they spoke. My mom thought Caroline used her church position to control people. Caroline thought my mom turned every disagreement into a moral issue. Dan usually stayed out of it. If the 2 women started debating something at a block party, he would suddenly need more ice. But sometimes he agreed with my mom and Caroline hated that. I saw it happen the Thanksgiving before this story. My grandparents had gotten sick, so our family canceled a trip 2 days before the holiday. Caroline heard about it and invited me to stop by their house because they were hosting several families from church. She said I should not sit home bored while my parents cooked a smaller dinner. I arrived around noon thinking I was a guest. Caroline hugged me, handed me an apron, and asked if I could organize the playroom before the other children arrived. Then she asked me to set the kids' table, watch 5 children while the adults ate appetizers, and wipe down the downstairs bathroom because one of the boys had made a mess. I was there almost 4 hours before I sat down with a plate. Dan came into the kitchen while I was loading cups into the dishwasher and looked confused. He asked why I was cleaning when I was supposed to be visiting. Caroline answered before I could. She said, "Ma likes helping." Besides, she brought her appetite. We are feeding her. Dan told her that food was not payment. Caroline got annoyed and said nobody had hired me. I was a family friend pitching in. I immediately told them it was fine because I did not want them arguing about me. Dan still slipped $40 into my coat pocket before I left. When Caroline found out later, she texted my mom and said Dan had embarrassed her by making their hospitality look like a business transaction. My mom wanted me to stop babysitting for them after that. I refused. I told her Caroline had not technically hired me on Thanksgiving, which was true. I said the girls would be upset if I quit. Also true. Mostly, I did not want to admit that being treated like family seemed to mean I was the only person expected to work for free. Things settled down after the holiday. Caroline paid my regular babysitting rate, and I convinced myself the Thanksgiving situation had been a misunderstanding. She still made comments about my mom sometimes. Nothing direct. Just little things like, "I am glad you are learning to be generous even if some people in your life count every favor." Or, "Dan always thinks your mother is right because she talks like a lawyer." She also started comparing me to other babysitters. One was a 19-year-old from her church named Abby. Caroline hired Abby twice, but the girls did not like her because she stayed on her phone. After the second time, Dan said in front of all of us that I was more responsible than most adults they knew. I felt proud. Caroline smiled, but it was the kind of smile where only her mouth moved. Then she said, "May is still a child, Dan. Do not make her think she runs the house." I should have paid more attention to that. Instead, I just tried harder to prove I deserved their trust. The final babysitting job happened on Good Friday. Caroline texted me 3 days earlier and asked if I could watch Sarah and Eliza from 4 until 10:30 while she and Dan went to dinner with friends after church. I replied that I could and confirmed my usual rate, $20 an hour for both girls. She sent back a thumbs up. I still had that message later, which became important. That Friday was unusually warm for April. I wore gray sweatpants, a striped tank top with lace along the neckline, and a zip-up sweatshirt. The tank top was from Brandy Melville. It was not low-cut, and my stomach was covered. I only mention that because I spent several days being forced to defend it like it was evidence from a crime scene. When I left my house, the sweatshirt was fully zipped. I brought my laptop because I had a history paper due Monday. My plan was to work after the girls went to sleep. I had done that before, and Caroline knew it. I never used it while the girls were awake except once when Sarah needed help looking up something for school. I arrived at 4 and the girls ran to the door. Sarah wanted to show me a science project. Eliza had built a blanket fort and was upset that nobody was allowed inside without a password. Everything felt normal. Caroline walked me through dinner and bedtime instructions while Dan searched for his wallet. Then a minivan pulled into the driveway. A woman I recognized from the Harper's church got out with a little boy named Noah. He looked about 6 and carried a backpack and a plastic sword. Caroline opened the door like she had been expecting him. Noah's mother thanked her several times, told Noah to behave, and hurried back to the van. I waited for Caroline to explain. She just said, "Noah's going to hang out with the girls tonight. His mom has an emergency and it seemed silly for her to find another sitter when you were already here." I asked if she knew how long he was staying. Caroline said his mother would pick him up around 10, probably before they got home. Then I asked the question I hated asking. Does that change the rate since it is 3 kids? Caroline glanced at Dan. He was putting on his jacket and did not seem to have heard me. She said, "May, he is 6. He will play with the girls. It is not like we handed you a newborn." I said I understood, but 3 children were still more work than 2. She gave me that patient smile adults use when they think a kid is being difficult. "We are already running late. Let us talk about it when we get home. You know we will take care of you." Then she kissed the girls, reminded Noah to listen to me, and left. Dan followed her out. He called back that they would not be late. The door closed before I had actually agreed to anything. For the first hour, Noah did play well with the girls. They ran around the backyard with the plastic sword and decided the blanket fort was a castle. I started dinner while they were occupied. Caroline had left frozen pizzas, carrot sticks, and a carton of chocolate ice cream. I put the pizzas in the oven and set my closed laptop on the far end of the dining table with my backpack on top of it. Things changed when Sarah told Noah he could not be king of the fort. He knocked down one wall, Eliza screamed, and Sarah grabbed the sword. I separated them, rebuilt part of the fort, and tried to explain that they could take turns. While I was doing that, the oven timer went off. Then Eliza spilled apple juice on the rug. Then Noah said he wanted to call his mom and asked if he could use my laptop because the screen was bigger than my phone. I told him no. I put my phone on speaker so he could leave his mom a message, but she did not answer. He seemed fine after that. I went into the kitchen to take out the pizzas while Sarah helped Eliza blot the rug with towels. I heard the crash before I saw what happened. When I ran back into the dining room, my laptop was on the hardwood floor. The backpack I had placed over it had been pushed aside. Noah stood next to the table with both hands over his mouth. A white line ran across the screen, and the bottom corner had separated from the frame. He started crying immediately. He said he only wanted to watch a video and did not know the laptop was heavy. I was upset, but I did not yell at him. He was 6. I asked if he was hurt, moved the laptop out of reach, and took pictures of the damage. Then I texted Caroline. I wrote, "No, took my laptop off the table while I was getting dinner, and he dropped it. The screen is badly cracked." I told him he could not use it, and it was closed under my backpack. I am sending pictures so you know what happened. She read it within 2 minutes but did not answer. I sent another message asking if she could contact Noah's mother because he was crying. 5 minutes later, Caroline replied, "Please focus on the kids for now. We can discuss your computer later." The wording bothered me. Your computer made it sound like the damage had nothing to do with her house or the child she had added. But I still assumed the adults would work it out. Maybe Noah's mother had insurance. Maybe they would split the repair. I did not expect a new laptop. I just did not think a 15-year-old should be responsible for a child breaking something after being told not to touch it. Dinner was chaotic. Noah refused carrots. Eliza cried because her pizza had a dark spot. Sarah kept asking whether I was angry. I told her I was not angry at them. We ate, cleaned up, and went outside because everyone needed to burn off energy. It was still warm and I was running between 3 children playing tag. After about 10 minutes, I took off my sweatshirt and tied it around my waist. None of the kids reacted. We played until the sky started getting dark. Then I brought everyone inside for ice cream. What I did not know was that the Harper's doorbell camera caught me crossing the front yard in the tank top when I went to retrieve Noah's sword. Caroline received motion alerts on her phone. She saw the video sometime that evening. She never messaged me to put my sweatshirt back on. She never said I was breaking a house rule. She did not call and ask what I was wearing. She saved the complaint until after the work was finished. Noah's mother did not arrive at 10. At 10:15, I texted Caroline again. She said her friend had been delayed and asked if Noah could stay until they returned. At 10:30, Sarah was asleep on the couch. Eliza was crying because she wanted her parents, and Noah was still awake asking when his mom was coming. Caroline and Dan finally walked in at 10:52. Dan looked surprised to see Noah. Apparently, he knew Noah was coming for part of the evening, but thought his mother would collect him hours earlier. Caroline said plans changed. I showed them the laptop. Dan winced and said, "Oh, May, I am so sorry. That looks bad." Caroline picked it up, examined the crack, and asked why it had been where Noah could reach it. I explained again that it was closed on the dining table, under my backpack. She said children climb and grab things, which was why babysitters needed to think ahead. Dan said they should contact Noah's mother before deciding anything. Caroline responded that everyone was tired and we could deal with it tomorrow. I also reminded her that we had never settled the rate for the 3rd child. She looked annoyed and said, "May, can we please not do accounting in front of the children at 11 at night?" I felt embarrassed even though she was the one who had delayed the conversation. I said okay. She told me she would send payment in the morning. Dan offered to drive me home, but I said my dad was already outside. I carried the broken laptop to the car and told my parents only the short version because I was exhausted. My dad asked whether the Harpers were paying for the repair. I said we were discussing it tomorrow. My mom looked at the laptop and said, "That means no." I defended Caroline. I said she had been stressed and the extra child was not hers. My mom asked why a child who was not hers had become my responsibility without warning. I said it was an emergency. I did not know that Caroline had already received money from Noah's mother. I would not find that out until much later. The next morning, there was no payment from the Harpers. I waited until almost noon before texting because it was Easter weekend and I did not want to seem impatient. I wrote, I just wanted to check in about payment for last night. For Sarah and Eliza from 4 to 10:30, the usual total would be $130. We never agreed on the amount for Noah, so please let me know what you think is fair. I also called a repair shop and they said they need to examine the laptop before giving a price. Caroline did not answer for 3 hours. When she finally did, the message was long. She said, "Hi May, Dan and I have discussed last night. We do not believe we are responsible for your laptop. You chose to bring an expensive device into a home with young children and left it where one could access it. We are also concerned that bringing schoolwork may have distracted you from your responsibilities. Regarding payment, we were disappointed to see the clothing you wore in front of our children. We are a conservative household, and the top shown on our camera was not appropriate. Considering everything, we feel $50 is more than fair." I read the message 3 times. The first time, I thought I had misunderstood. The second time, I started shaking. The third time, I showed my mom. She read it without saying anything. Her face got calmer with every sentence, which is how I know she is truly angry. When she finished, she handed the phone back and asked whether Caroline had ever given me a dress code. I said no. She asked whether Caroline had seen the camera footage while I was still working. I said she must have because the app sent alerts immediately. My mom asked whether Caroline had told me to put the sweatshirt back on. I said no again. Then she asked the most important question. Did your shirt somehow make the hours you already worked disappear? I knew the answer was no, but I still felt guilty. I kept thinking about the word conservative. Maybe I should have remembered how religious they were. Maybe a lace trim tank looked different to adults than it did to me. Maybe I should have asked before taking off the sweatshirt. I said all of that out loud, and my mom stopped me. She said, they are allowed to decide they do not want to hire you again. They are not allowed to invent a rule after the work is finished and use it to erase your pay." I understood what she meant. I still did not want a huge fight with people who lived 3 houses away. Before my mom could help me write a response, I went upstairs and sent one myself. I wrote, "I am really sorry my outfit made you uncomfortable. I took off my sweatshirt because I was running outside with the kids and got hot. I was covered, and I did not know there was a rule about tank tops. I also did not use my laptop while the kids were awake. I would be willing to accept $80 and discuss the repair separately because I do not want this to turn into a bigger problem." The second I sent it, my mom asked what I had written. When I showed her, she closed her eyes and rubbed her forehead. She did not yell. Somehow that made me feel worse. Caroline replied almost immediately this time. She said, "I appreciate that you recognize your mistake. However, $80 is not reasonable when you were provided dinner, dessert, and a comfortable home for the evening. The children adore you, and we have always treated you generously. We are prepared to send $50 and allow you another opportunity in the future if you can respect our standards." That was the first time I got really angry. A comfortable home for the evening. She was describing babysitting 3 children like I had rented a vacation property. I had not gone there to relax. I had cleaned juice out of a rug, made dinner, settled 3 arguments, managed a broken laptop, and stayed 22 minutes past the agreed time. The pizza was not a gift. It was food I ate while supervising children through dinner. My mom asked me not to respond again until my dad came home. Then she emailed both Caroline and Dan. The email was short. She said the agreed rate was documented, the work had been completed, and any concerns about future clothing could be discussed separately. She requested the full $130 by the end of the day and asked them to contact Noah's mother about the laptop. Caroline did not answer the email. Instead, she texted me privately. She wrote, "I am disappointed that you involved your mother after saying you wanted to handle this maturely. I have known you since you were a little girl, and it is sad to see you becoming another version of her. Everything does not need to become a threat or transaction." I stared at that line about my mom. It had nothing to do with my shirt, my laptop, or the children. It was like a curtain moved for a second and I saw an older argument behind the one we were having. My dad got home around 4. He works Saturdays at a local hardware store, so he had only heard pieces of the story through my mom's text. He sat at the kitchen table and asked me to explain everything from the beginning without anyone interrupting. My mom actually looked offended by that, but she let me talk. I showed him the original booking message, the text about no breaking the laptop, Caroline's response telling me to focus on the children, and the messages about my clothing. He wrote down the times on a yellow legal pad. Then he asked if I had ever been told I could not bring homework. I showed him an old message from Caroline, saying it was fine to study after bedtime. He asked if I had agreed to watch Noah. I said I tried to discuss it, but they left before we settled anything. Dad looked at the page for a while. Then he said, "You did one thing wrong." My stomach dropped. My mom turned toward him so fast I thought they were about to argue. He tapped the message where I offered to accept $80. "You started negotiating against yourself. Do not do that again." I almost cried from relief. He told me we could debate whether leaving a laptop on a dining table around children was wise. We could debate whether the Harpers owed the entire repair, or whether Noah's mother did. What we could not debate was whether I had worked from 4 until 10:52. He also refused to inspect my tank top. My mom offered to show him the picture because she wanted him to see how normal it was. He said it did not matter. If I had arrived in a Halloween costume, Caroline could have sent me home before leaving. She could not wait until the next day and cancel my wages. That was the first time I realized how much energy Caroline had made me spend proving the shirt was not inappropriate. As long as I argued about the neckline, I was accepting her claim that my pay depended on her opinion of it. My dad asked what I wanted to do, not what he wanted, not what my mom wanted. I said I wanted my full pay. I also wanted someone to help repair my laptop, but I was willing to wait for an estimate before demanding a number. Mostly, I wanted Caroline to stop talking to me like I had done something shameful. Dad helped me write one final message, but he made me press send. I wrote, I completed the agreed work and stayed beyond the agreed time. No clothing requirement was discussed before or during the job. You saw the camera footage while I was still at your home and did not ask me to change. I am requesting the full $130. The laptop is a separate issue, and we can discuss it after I receive a written repair estimate. I will not be accepting future jobs from your family. Caroline replied, you are making a very adult decision, and adult decisions have consequences. We will not be recommending you to anyone in our church or neighborhood. Then she added, for someone demanding adult wages, you should learn to accept adult responsibility. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a Venmo notification. Dan had sent me $150. The note just said, babysitting Friday, thank you. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt confused. The amount was $20 more than the original total, but still less than I would have charged for a third child, and the extra 22 minutes. It was obviously Dan's attempt to end the fight. I texted him thank you and said I still wanted to discuss the laptop after the repair estimate. Less than a minute later, Caroline messaged me. She wrote, Dan sent that without my agreement. Please understand that the extra money does not mean your behavior was acceptable. I hope you are satisfied with creating conflict in our marriage over a shirt. That message changed the entire story for me. Until then, I thought she was angry because she believed I had broken a rule. Now she was telling me she was angry because her husband had disagreed with her. My mom added Dan to a group text and asked whether he wanted the laptop estimate sent there. Dan replied, yes. Then he wrote, for clarity, I did not have an issue with May's clothes. I also did not agree that her pay should be reduced. I think Noah's mother needs to be included in the repair discussion. Caroline responded in the same group. She said, of course you do. You always find a way to make Leah and May the reasonable ones. You did the same thing at Thanksgiving when you paid her after I invited her as a guest. You constantly undermine me in my own home. Dan wrote, this is not about Leah. We hired May and she worked. Paying her is not undermining you. Caroline did not answer for almost an hour. Then she left the group chat. My mom looked at me and said, there it is. I knew what she meant. Caroline had turned my clothes into a loyalty test for her husband. If Dan agreed that my tank top was harmless and that I deserved payment, Caroline saw it as him choosing my family over her. The argument had started before I even arrived that Friday. I was just the easiest person to punish. We took my laptop to repair shop Monday after school. The technician said the screen assembly and hinge needed replacement. The estimate was $428. He also wrote that the damage was consistent with a drop, not normal wear. My dad emailed the estimate to Dan and Caroline and asked them either to cover it or provide Noah's mother's contact information. Dan replied that he would talk to Caroline and Noah's family. Caroline did not reply at all. I hoped that was the end of the public part. The Harpers had paid me. We could deal with the computer quietly. I would avoid their house and move on. That hope lasted until Tuesday morning. My friend Lily found me before first period. Her mom hires several local babysitters, and Lily sometimes works for families from Caroline's church. She pulled me into an empty section of the hallway and held up her phone. She asked, is this about you? On the screen was a post from a private neighborhood Facebook group. Caroline had written it the previous night. She did not use my last name, but she called me a 15-year-old neighbor who had worked for her family for a year. Everyone knew who she meant. The post said she wanted to warn local parents about the dangers of hiring teenagers without clear boundaries. According to her version, I brought electronics to work, left them accessible, failed to supervise a guest child, and then demanded hundreds of dollars when the device broke. She said I had worn revealing clothes around young children in a conservative home and became aggressive when she tried to address it. She also claimed my parents threatened legal action and attempted to damage her reputation because she offered constructive feedback. There was no mention of her adding Noah without my agreement. No mention that the laptop had been closed. No mention that she waited until the work was finished to complain about my shirt. No mention that she had tried to pay $50 for nearly 7 hours. The comments were already divided. Some people said teenagers needed to learn responsibility. One woman from Caroline's church wrote that every homeowner had the right to enforce standards under their own roof. Another person asked why a babysitter needed a laptop at all. But several parents asked whether I had actually been paid, and Caroline avoided answering. Lily said her mother had seen the post and wanted to know whether she should stop recommending me. My face got hot. I could handle Caroline disliking me. I could not handle losing other jobs because she had posted a version that made me sound careless and greedy. I showed Lily the messages. She read them in silence, then looked back at the Facebook post. She said, she left out literally everything. By lunch, screenshots had spread beyond the neighborhood group. 2 people from school asked whether I had really demanded $600 from a family because a kid touched my computer. Someone else joked that I should start a fund for a new wardrobe. I spent the entire day feeling like everyone was looking at my shirt even though I was wearing a hoodie and jeans. When I got home, Caroline was watering flowers in her front yard. It was too early in the season for them to need that much water. She watched me walk from the bus stop to my house. I kept my eyes forward. My dad had already seen the Facebook post because Lily's mother sent it to him. He was angry, but he did not post anything. He asked me what I wanted. My mom wanted to upload every screenshot immediately. Dad said once something went online, we could not control where it went. He wanted me to understand that before agreeing. I was scared. If we responded, more people would know. Caroline might post the camera image of me in the tank top. I imagine people from school sharing it and debating my body. I almost said we should ignore her. Then Lily texted me that another family had canceled a babysitting job for Saturday. The mother told her she had heard I was distracted by devices and had threatened a client over an accident. That was the moment I stopped wanting the conflict to disappear. It was not disappearing. Caroline was using my silence as proof. I told my dad we could respond, but I wanted the children's names and faces kept out of it. I also did not want him posting a picture of my shirt. If people believed I had to prove my clothes were acceptable before earning wages, we had already lost the argument. Dad said, "Good, then we stick to what can be proved." We spent that evening making a timeline. 4 o'clock, I arrived for 2 children. 4:05, Noah was dropped off. 6:12, the laptop was damaged, and I notified Caroline. 6:14, she told me to focus on the children. 10:15, I reported that Noah had not been collected. 10:52, the Harpers returned. The next day, Caroline offered $50 because of my clothing. My dad wrote the post, but he let me edit it. We removed anything about religion or old arguments between the adults. We did not call Caroline a thief. We did not say she sexualized me, even though several people had used that word. We simply attached the booking message, the laptop message, and the payment message with names covered. The final paragraph was mine. I wrote, "I understand that families may have different rules. Those rules need to be explained before a job, not created afterward to avoid paying for work. I will not babysit for the Harpers again. I am sharing this only because a public post about me has already caused another family to cancel a job." My dad asked one last time if I was sure. I said yes. He posted it in the same neighborhood group and then put his phone face down on the table. For about 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then the notifications started. The first comments were from people asking Caroline why she had not mentioned the offer of $50. A man who lived on the next block wrote that clothing concerns did not cancel a debt. The woman from Caroline's church replied that parents had a right to protect their children from inappropriate influences. My dad asked her which part of the documented timeline changed the hours I worked. She did not answer. Then Noah's mother commented. Her name was Nicole. She wrote, "I think there has been a serious misunderstanding. I paid Caroline $75 on Friday because she told me May had agreed to watch Noah and that the money would go to her. I would never expect a teenager to watch my child for free. May, please message me about the laptop." I read that comment so many times that the words stopped looking real. Caroline had not simply added a child and assumed he would be no extra work. She had charged his mother for babysitting. She had collected $75 for work I did and never told me the money existed. My mom said, "You have got to be kidding me." Dad took a screenshot before anyone could delete it. Then he asked me not to reply while I was angry. I listened for about 5 minutes. After that, I messaged Nicole privately and sent her the pictures of the laptop. She called my mom almost immediately. Nicole explained that her own sitter had canceled because of a family emergency. Caroline offered to help and said I was already working that night. Nicole asked whether I was comfortable with a third child. Caroline told her I had done it before and was happy for the extra money. Nicole sent $75 through Venmo before dropping Noah off. None of that was true. I had never watched 3 children for the Harpers. I had not agreed to the amount. Caroline had stood in front of me, acted like my question about extra pay was unreasonable, and then kept money specifically intended for me. Nicole apologized over and over. She also made Noah apologize about the laptop on speakerphone. He sounded terrified, which made me feel awful. I told him I knew it was an accident and that I was not angry with him. The adults should have handled it differently. Nicole offered to pay the entire repair bill of $428. My parents said we should not decide that until we knew what Caroline had promised and whether the Harper's insurance covered accidents. Nicole had already paid for childcare. Making her pay everything again would let Caroline keep the money and avoid responsibility. While our parents talked, the Facebook post kept growing. Abby, the 19-year-old sitter from Caroline's church, added a comment. She said the Harpers had asked her to clean their kitchen and fold laundry while babysitting, then acted offended when she said those jobs cost extra. She had stopped working for them after Dan came home nearly 2 hours late and Caroline refused to pay for the additional time because Abby had been allowed to eat dinner there. Another teenager described being invited to a church holiday party and then spending most of it supervising children. A parent said Caroline once dropped Sarah and Eliza at her house for a play date that somehow lasted 6 hours. The comments were not all dramatic, but the pattern was obvious. Caroline offered warmth, food, and community. Then she used those things to make people feel selfish for discussing money or time. Caroline finally responded under my dad's post. She said the conversation had become a coordinated attack on her family. She claimed Nicole's $75 covered the inconvenience of having another child in her home, even though Caroline had not been in that home for most of the night. She said Abby was bitter because she had not been asked back. Then she accused my mother of waiting years for a chance to embarrass her because of religious differences. My mom typed a response and deleted it 3 times. In the end, she wrote only, "You collected payment for work performed by my daughter. Please send her the $75 and address the laptop repair privately." About 10 minutes later, Caroline deleted her original warning post. She could not delete my dad's post because he had created it. She left the neighborhood group instead. Dan called my dad that evening. I could hear only my dad's side from the kitchen. He kept saying, "I understand, but that is between you and your wife." Then, "The children are not being blamed." Then, "No, Mark is not asking for a public apology." After the call, Dad told us Dan had not known Nicole paid Caroline $75. Caroline controlled most of their social plans and household scheduling. She had told him Noah's stay was a favor between friends. Dan was angry, but he also wanted us to remove the post because people from church were contacting him. My dad said he would update the post when the money and repair were settled, but he would not delete accurate information while Caroline's claims were still circulating. Dan said he understood. I got the feeling he did not like it, but for once his discomfort was not becoming my problem. The next day, Dan sent me the $75 from his own account. He included a note saying it was the payment Nicole had intended for me. That meant I had received $225 total for the evening, which was more than my normal rate. My parents asked if I wanted to return part of Dan's first payment of $150. I said no. I had worked nearly 7 hours, watched an unplanned third child, stayed late, and spent several days defending myself publicly. For the first time, I did not feel greedy saying that. The laptop still needed to be resolved. My dad sent a certified letter to both the Harpers and Nicole with the repair estimate and a factual description of the accident. It was not a lawsuit. It simply said that if the adults could not agree on payment within 10 business days, we would file in small claims court and let a judge decide responsibility. Caroline texted me the day the letter arrived. She wrote, "I hope you understand what your family is doing to ours. Sarah keeps asking why you do not come over. Eliza cried when she heard you would not babysit again. Whatever disagreement the adults had, the children do not deserve to lose someone they love." For a moment, that message worked. I missed the girls. None of this was their fault. I pictured Eliza inside the blanket fort and Sarah showing me her science project. I started typing that maybe I could visit them when their parents were home. Then I remembered Caroline's phrase, "whatever disagreement the adults had." She still was not acknowledging that she had withheld my wages, kept money paid for my labor, insulted my mother, and damaged my reputation. She was using the girls because the other arguments had failed. I deleted my draft and wrote, "I care about Sarah and Eliza, but I will not return to your home. Please communicate with my parents about the laptop." She replied, "This is exactly the cold response I expected from Leah's daughter." I took a screenshot and did not answer. 3 days later, Dan came to our house alone. My parents spoke with him on the porch while I stayed inside. He agreed that the Harpers would pay the repair and deal with Nicole separately. Their homeowner's insurance deductible was higher than the repair, so he wrote my dad a check for $428. Before leaving, he asked if he could apologize to me. I went to the door. He said he was sorry he had left before the rate for Noah was settled. He admitted he heard part of my question but chose not to stop because Caroline was already angry that they were late. He also said he should have paid me the moment they got home instead of letting the argument continue. I appreciated that his apology included things he had actually done. I told him I accepted it, but I still would not babysit for them. He nodded and said he understood. Caroline's apology came by email that night. It was 5 paragraphs long. She said she was sorry the situation had become public. She was sorry I had felt judged. She was sorry that a simple conversation about household standards had been twisted into accusations about her character. She said we had both made mistakes and hoped our families could move forward without further negativity. She never said she was sorry for offering $50. She never mentioned Nicole's money. She never admitted that the clothing rule had appeared after I worked. At the end, she asked my father to delete his Facebook post as a gesture of good faith. I read the email once and forwarded it to my parents. My mom asked if I wanted to answer. I said no. Dad updated his post instead. He wrote that all babysitting payments and the laptop repair had been received, and our family considered the financial dispute closed. He did not delete the screenshots. He turned off comments the next morning. For the next few weeks, living 3 houses away from the Harpers was awkward. If Caroline saw us outside, she went back into her house. Dan waved but did not stop to talk. Sarah called my name once from their driveway and I waved back. Caroline quickly guided her into the car. Some people in the neighborhood thought my parents had handled everything correctly. Others thought posting the screenshots had been cruel. A woman at the grocery store told my mom that disputes should remain private. My mom asked whether the original warning about me had been private. The woman suddenly became interested in the cereal shelf. The family that canceled my Saturday job eventually apologized and hired me again. I declined. They had believed a Facebook post without asking me a single question, and I did not want to enter another house already needing to prove I was trustworthy. Lily and I started a group chat for local teenage babysitters. At first, it was just 6 of us comparing rates. Then we made a basic agreement parents had to confirm by text. It listed the number of children, start and end times, extra child charges, late fees, expected chores, and emergency contacts. We added one sentence saying meals provided during a shift were not a substitute for wages. Lily called it the pizza clause. My dad helped us write a section about damaged property. It did not say parents were automatically responsible for everything. It said accidents would be discussed based on what happened and that neither side could deduct money without agreement. That felt fair. I had learned that having a boundary did not mean pretending I could never make a mistake. About 2 months later, a new family contacted me through Lily. They had 2 children and lived on the other side of town. Before confirming, the mother asked what rate I charged, whether homework was allowed after bedtime, and whether I was comfortable with their indoor camera. She also told me they did not have a dress code beyond wearing something safe for playing with children. The night of that job was hot. I wore the same striped tank top and brought the repaired laptop in my backpack. I almost put on a sweatshirt before leaving even though it was 78 degrees outside. Then I stopped. My dad was in the kitchen when I came downstairs. He looked at my outfit, but only because I was standing there waiting for him to say something. Finally, he asked, "Do you have the address and emergency numbers?" I said, "Yes." "Did they confirm the rate?" "Yes." "Did they confirm how many children?" "2, definitely 2. He smiled and handed me the car keys. "Then you are ready." The new job was completely normal. The children ate dinner, argued once over a video game, and went to bed 20 minutes late. I used my laptop after they were asleep. Their mother texted when she was on the way home, arrived at the agreed time, and paid me before I left. Nobody offered me a second chance. Nobody counted the pizza as compensation. Nobody treated my clothes like a debt they could subtract from my work. When I got home, my mom asked how it went. I told her nothing happened. She said, "Good." That is how most jobs are supposed to go. I still missed Sarah and Eliza sometimes. I still felt sad when I passed their house, but I no longer confused missing the girls with owing their mother access to me. Caroline had spent a year calling me family whenever she wanted me to give more in an employee, whenever she wanted to criticize me. The moment I asked to be treated fairly, she called me ungrateful. I used to think being mature meant making adults comfortable, accepting less, and solving every problem without help. Now I think it means knowing what you agreed to, keeping records, asking questions before someone walks out the door, and not apologizing for work you already completed. The Harpers did not lose a babysitter because of a tank top. They lost one because they believed a 15-year-old would be easier to shame than to pay.